I guess because it's the start, we'll make an opening statement. Good to see some of you. I haven't seen you guys for a while. Obviously, it's been exciting to get started with some new guys, certainly some returners, and I think we've had 12 or 13 practices. So it's nice to get to work and have not unlimited time, but ample time to really train hard and get a feel sort of where we're at. And obviously, there's a lot of enthusiasm for the start of the year, and the biggest message I've given our team, and I think it's really important, is first of all, no one can take away what happened last year. It was obviously a fun year, a terrific year, but I think a big mistake would be to try to compare themselves or ourselves to last year's team. I think the key really is, and I told them this, is for you as a group, you're a different team, and you're going to have to certainly find your identity, and we will as the season progresses, but you obviously max out, absolutely get as good as you can be, and perhaps that will make you better than last year's team and take you further, and perhaps you won't be as good and won't go as far, but either of those are regardless. It's really all about what this team can max out to and reach its full potential. And I think that idea of focusing on that and not worrying about what was behind you, what's ahead of you, or saying, well, at this point we were here last year, because I said maybe you get off to a better start and you think, well, we're ahead, or vice versa. I think that's with all of the attention that some of our guys are receiving in the club I think it's an important mindset, and I think they have that mindset in practice to really get after it and to you know, try to push each other and see where we're at. So that might be the longest opening statement I've ever made in my time here, so there you go. You shouldn't have any more questions. That should have just satisfied everything right there. Yeah, let's do it again. yeah, well, let's start it over again. So.
Hey, Tony, I wonder, is there anything that you learned last year about managing expectations that you kind of applied to this year's group?
Yeah, I think you definitely, you take the stuff you learned from last year. It's not like, well, last year didn't happen, it did. And, you know, as we were progressing, and I think even early in the year we were projected, I think we were ranked in the preseason to start the year, and took us a while to really find or hit our stride. And then as the season progressed in the ACC, as we were striving for that, got ranked, being a 1 seed, all those things that happened, absolutely, I think our guys have, the ones that are returning, that experience to draw from. And, you know, we use the example, I've used it with you guys before, it comes down to like the horses. You put the blinders on and you take the step in front of you. And last year, I think I sat here and talked about Coach Holland that spoke to our team, and Rick Carlisle, Coach Carlisle, about, again, honoring the process and what's in front of you. And that never changes. Whether you're projected to be real good or not projected to be as good, that stays the same. But I think those experiences of last year, being in those spots more and more, you certainly draw from and know it all gets played out on the floor, and you can talk about it and hype about it, but none of that stuff really matters. It's what happens when it gets going.
Hey, Tony. Oh, well, that was loud. You guys have been practicing a couple of weeks now, and I guess a couple of guys have some bumps and bruises. London, does he have some kind of a foot issue? And also Marielle, I think has had a couple issues. And are there anybody else who's
No, those are nothing major. Those are the two. London hasn't practiced yet, and that's you know, that obviously he's an important piece to the team. But in some ways, that's been good because, you know, it's forced guys to have to take bigger roles, and hopefully he's progressing well. He kind of jarred his foot and hasn't practiced. He did all the way up until the start of official practice. It's funny, last year he hurt his shoulder and was out for I don't know if it was 3 weeks or whatever the amount of time was. And then Marielle didn't, you know, unfortunately for Marielle this summer, he pulled his hamstring in the start of summer, and then he had a scope on his knee. So he didn't get to do much this fall, but when we started official practice, he's been able now to do all of the practices. And you know, I think he's missed some of the conditioning and the fundamental skill work, but he has been practicing. London's the only one who has not practiced yet. So, you know, again, we're we know what London can do, and we're looking forward because he had a good offseason in terms of developing his physical. I think he's a little stronger, more explosive, and he's brings that steadying hand to our team that will certainly be important as we get into competition.
Tony, defense has obviously been a constant of your program thus far, but if memory serves, last year was by far your most efficient offensive team. In your mind, what made it so, and do you see the same ingredients perhaps in this squad? Yeah,
I think we'll have to be a little different offensively, but you strive for that as a coach to be. I always tell our players what separates, real good players from others is their game's efficient. They can score on not a huge volume of shots. They don't have massive turnovers. They're just efficient players. Well, when your team plays that way, certainly even defensively, but offensively, that's what you look for. You look for points per possession. You look for that stuff. I thought last year what we did so well is we had a pretty balanced attack, and we really, I think we had speaking of Akil and Joe, they had a ton of experience under their belt, but Joe was an aggressive guy in terms of looking for catches, getting catches, but he was very unselfish. He always would make the next pass, and then when it was needed, he'd step up and shoot the shots, and he drew a lot of attention. And I think his willingness is one of our top players to have that next pass mentality a lot of times, even though he was, heavily covered, just let us get a timing and a pace. And I thought that was important. And then certainly Akil's willingness to really get people open, play on the glass, and be opportunistic with how he scored were two heavily experienced guys that really understood that. And I think that's what made us good, because we had three perimeter guys who could put it on the floor and could knock down shots, and then we had the inside-outside attack. But there was a level of they really moved the ball and understood how to break people down. And again, this year's team, I think we have a little different team. I think, inside we'll be able to look at times more perhaps than last year, just with, the personnel we have. You're not going to replace Joe Harris. We'll do it differently, but we still have some good guys, and some of those new guys will have great opportunities. But again, how efficient they play, how unselfish they are, while still being, I say, running our offense to score will determine it. And taking care of the ball. We struggled early in the year last year. We were a high turnover team, and then we really got a handle on that in terms of, playing with, I don't know what our average was turnover-wise, but we really handled the ball and got shots, quality shots, most of the time down the floor. So if we can take care of the ball, we believe we're going to get some good looks and get quality shots.
Tony, Malcolm obviously came into his own last year and had a really big season. What can he do to elevate his game again, and is it realistic to think he's going to do so? Yeah,
I think he, again, had a good offseason. The challenge for those guys is to take a step. We're going to improve collectively if you guys make, and for some guys it's just little improvements. They can't make these huge jumps in their own game. With Coach Curtis in the weight room, with their conditioning, with their athleticism, we use the term of not honing your skills, owning your skill, whatever that is, and really developing, improving your shot a little bit, your handles, just either adding something or making it even better what you did. And I think when guys become upperclassmen, or, in Malcolm's case and Anthony's case, they're fourth year juniors, that there's not these as big of jumps like you see from first to second or second to third. So you just want them to, even mentally become sharper, lead more, kind of those intangibles that are really important. So those are the things I'm looking for, along with the incremental improvements in their physical game and skills. And I think that's, with him, obviously he had such a solid year, and he's obviously going to be targeted this year, or there's going to be a lot of focus on him, and how he deals with that will be another step, though he had it last year, but it'll be another step this year, and I think hopefully he'll adjust to that well.
Tony, I know you've got 3 starters back, and you've only had a couple weeks of practice, like you said, but do you get a sense of which one of the freshmen, or how many of the freshmen can really help you this year? And have you even thought about rotations and things, how to get those guys in there?
Yeah, I think we're going to need, it just depends, so many things, foul trouble, injuries, all those things come into play, and we do have some quality depth. Our freshmen, you know, they've all of them at times, I feel like I say this every year, but it's because they're freshmen, they've shown flashes where you think, well, I think they can help us. And then those times you see that they're spinning a little bit. So I believe I think there's going to be an opportunity, again, assuming we stay healthy, because we do have some experience, for a couple of them to step in there, perhaps one on the interior and one or two on the perimeter. Again, it just depends. We've got a guy like Evan Nolte who can can go the 4 or the 3, so he can kind of be a perimeter type or play more of the forward position at the 4. But they really have. And again, I think until we're starting to go up and down a little more in practice, and that's starting to show some things, and then we have a couple scrimmages. Then I'll tell you, that's something I look at every day, and I study and say, okay, which one is most ready? And again, Devin Hall is a first year with a red shirt behind him, so I think that helps him. He's done a good job. I mean, all the guys have shown some improvements, but you'll see he's changed his body. He's moving better. All those things have occurred. But I think that, and even with London not practicing now, you know, I'm getting to see guys have to handle the ball and be in spots that challenge them. So I think there's an opportunity for a couple of them for sure, maybe more depending upon the situation, but it's too early to say which ones. It's a pretty competitive fight, and that doesn't mean the older guys are just going to walk into spots. I remind them all the time, you got to earn everything you get, and that's what made our team good last year, is guys really competed hard for opportunities and understood their roles. Sometimes it's understanding what this team needs and fitting in that way.
Tony, right over here.
It's all about the base, right?
Yeah. Do you think you need, obviously Malcolm is a proven scorer dating back to last year. With Joe gone, do you feel you need a guy who's going to be a consistent, I don't know how many points it is, but a guy you can sort of lean on to score points? And who do you think that is, who kind of is, you know, it seems like a lot of your sophomores and juniors, they've proven capable of doing that, but not necessarily on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I think when you, again, become an upperclassman, I think hopefully the best thing you see is consistency. And we've got some of those guys that have shown it at times. Mike Tobey on the interior. You know, obviously Anthony Gill showed it last year. Justin at times. You know, Evan. Some of these guys who can do it. London, who, though he's an underclassman, he's played enough where he's got the experience. I think, you know, you never want someone to stretch themselves outside of being effective, but you want guys to do that. I think a guy like London can do that. You know, we saw that almost as the season started, his progression as a player, where I think he has a timing and he has a composure and unselfishness, but I think he has some room for more aggressiveness. And I think we're going to have to get it in little ways from all those guys I mentioned, and perhaps there'll be another guy. And if I didn't mention anybody, it's not for any reason. But I think those guys, I think if we could get a consistent one, because you're obviously trying to replace. I don't know, we don't have a clone of Joe, nor do we have a clone of Akil, but you got to get it in little ways. I remember answering that question, you know, when Mike Scott left, and every year you think about that. But I think there's a physicality to this team that hopefully, again, maybe we get to the line more, get on the glass. As I mentioned, there's opportunities, you know, to go inside. Again, Darian Atkins is, you know, he's our lone senior, and he's had a good off season. And again, I know he's anxious and looking forward to the opportunity, and he showed signs his sophomore year before he got hurt, and last year he didn't play as much, but there's some opportunities for him, and you know, you'll see how they flourish. But I think it's going to be little ways. But yeah, that consistency in the scoring is something we've got to look to get.
Coach, the ACC is always tough, but 4 teams in the top 10, including yourself, with the addition of a Louisville, it just seems as though the conference schedule just gets harder and harder, and with a new team out there, as you mentioned, losing guys like Joe Harris and Akil Mitchell, it's going to be tough on you. What are you telling the guys as you get ready for the non-conference schedule, and then you get into those tough games against top 10 teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us know this league. You know, you look, sometimes I'll come down here and I just look because they have to replace and add, you know, the new signs, but that's a mighty basketball league, and again, it's exciting. It really is. It's challenging. It's one of those where you better play well, because if you can play well and it still might not be enough, but everybody's in that boat. And again, experience. Boy, that's so important. We have to rely on our experience. That's our formula here in a lot of ways, that the guys who've been through it. And, you know, what you get from young guys is a little bit of icing on the cake. You know, obviously Lennon gave us more than that last year, but we're not in a spot like when Joe and Akil were freshmen. They had to be thrown into it. That's just where we were, and certainly we benefited from it. Now, I think if a first year's ready, he'll have opportunities, but we've got to use those guys who have the experience, and you expect them, as they experienced the last couple of years, what it takes, how competitive it is, to understand that and carry you through it. Because there's the talent in the league will be at another level, especially with the addition of Louisville. We play twice. But again, all that goes down to just how good can we be and understanding who we are, because that's still evolving. We have our constants and we know certain things, but how will this team be effective? And you got to kind of figure that out as the season progresses.
What is the next step for Mike Tobey?
Yeah, I think the consistency. Again, you'll see he's gotten stronger. He had a good offseason. All of our guys did. I can't give enough credit to Coach Curtis. I know there's been articles written on him, but he's that good. He really is. And, you know, so Mike's gotten stronger. The past summer he was with me. Well, he's with the USA basketball team, and this summer, this offseason, he really got to spring, summer, and part of the fall really work. You know, that really, the spring, summer, and fall is for the individual, in the sense of that's really work on their games, their body, those things, and so he's stronger. And now it's, I think, for him being more consistent, continuing to embrace the physicality, that he's taken, again, little steps. I think there's some guys that we expect to hopefully have, as Mark mentioned, maybe more consistency, or who can take those steps. Guys like Justin, who's showing flashes, guys like Mike, and those two, if they can just take another step and have a consistent approach, and Mike using his physicality, you know, certainly look inside and play on the glass, do the things he can do, I think will be his next step, because he's young for his grade. We always talk about that in his first year, his second year. Well, now he's old enough.
Tony, last year you had one of the deepest teams in the country, and I know at this time of the year last year you were a little hesitant to talk about that because of past injuries and stuff, but yeah. What did you learn as a coach having all that depth last year? How did that help you in tough situations, and how would you compare this year's depth to last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good for practice, especially now, because there's just, you're going at it. Certainly the obvious things of, you know, when there's foul trouble, when there's injuries, real important. The challenging thing is, you know, you can't play everybody all the time, and so, you know, those are the battles that players face and coaches face, trying to decide who's ready. Our depth this year to last year, you know, we have the young man who's sitting out, who transferred from Tennessee. You know, he's a talented player, so it's nice to have him in practice. I don't know, Bach, what do you think? How's their depth to last year? Yeah, it's close. I just, when I get stuck, I ask Bach for advice here. I think there's quality depth. I do. You know, again, depth-wise, you know, again, we know what we're replacing the experience, but there is, when you watch it, and you'll see there's some physicality. I think we're a little more physical. You look at us, guys, there's some athleticism, some length. When you see that with the new guys that have come in, you look at, you know, Jack Salt, physical, long. Isaiah is long. Marielle, BJ, you know, Devin has been there, and then even Darius. They're all long, so there's a lot of, it's sometimes, especially when you're practicing here, it gets a little crowded in here. I mean, just sometimes you look at the court and you see, you know, you think things are there, and that length crowds things up. So I like our depth athletically and physically, so I think it's solid for practices.
Tony, you guys have established a real firm defensive identity and had a lot of success. How do you view the potential of this team defensively, given the experience and some of the things you just talked about with depth? And
you know, it's whenever you assume, oh yeah, that's because that's our identity, that's who we are. I remember my dad telling me this. He said, you got to come to practice each day, and you got to outlast them. It's a battle between you and them. He said that as a coach, in your mind, you've got to impose your will on them. Our staff has to impose our will on them, what we expect, and how disciplined they have to be defensively. Because again, I've always said it's not natural to play defense, to be in a stance, to fight through screens, to really get after it. And so if they'll embrace that, and again, if they'll understand that's where it starts for us, then I think because of the length, because of the size, they can be effective. Again, you lose that experience, and obviously we had an all-conference guy in Akil who could do some things, but that's the opportunities out there for guys like certainly Darion, who would be most similar, in terms of athletically, as far as playing against ball screens and doing all that, but then the other guys. And that's where you asked Doug about Mike Tobey. We want to see him take another step defensively there. Anthony Gill, obviously those are both good offensive players on the front court. So, again, those guys stepping up. But that's a battle every day, and you want to get guys to embrace it, but you gotta push pretty hard on that one, and usually the coaches win in that day. But you try to get the guys to embrace that, and the experience helps. Those guys know it, and they hold each other accountable too.
You mentioned Mike Curtis a couple of times. What has he meant to the overall program, and what is it about him that makes him so effective with what he does?
Well, he's so detail-oriented, and he had his experience in the NBA for 6 years, and he's a valued commodity. Like, he's had other opportunities, but he loves it here. We've got his grandparents here. That's always important, and his parents are close in Richmond, so that's going well. But he has a unique system. It's a system approach, and it almost starts when they come in, and it builds through it, and it's very individualized. And of course, we use this in recruiting with guys because every coach says, hey, we got the best strength coach in the country. I mean, and there's so many good ones, but his philosophy and his system of how he teaches it's different. I've been around, and that's one of the things when I got this job, I thought about that a lot. I said, I know how important that is for aspiring players to get the most out of themselves, for injury prevention. I mean, we got 2-3 days a week. We're doing corrective exercises, stuff that when I was coming up, we didn't do, but his approach is good. It's for the longevity of the players. It's for health reasons. And, some of it's modeled after some of these top soccer teams, the way they train. You look at, he's got a lot of stuff that's beyond my knowledge, but I trust him. And I love that because I think that today's athlete, they get into that. They understand they're in tune with their body. They want to push themselves. And Mike has an ability with his support, and we work together that I think gives us an edge. I say he's the ace up the sleeve. I like to tell recruits, I wish I could tell you I'm the best coach in the country. I'm not. That's easy for me to say. But I can say easily, we got the best strength coach in the country. No doubt I'll take that to the bank. So that's how I feel about him for real.
Tony, I know you're focused on this team, the present. You don't want them to look back, don't want them to look forward. But it seems like all offseason, whether it's you, the players, there's been just signs of where this program is now compared to even, say, a year ago, where it's viewed just nationally. Have you enjoyed that? Have you, I know a lot of people have congratulated you, congratulated the players. There's season tickets are sold out. Is this everything kind of you imagined when you took this job and sort of wanted to build it steadily like this?
I really enjoyed the free desserts that I've gotten because of it at the restaurants. That's been the best thing, I think. So, no, to see the joy that it's brought to people that have been, I always say, true fans of Virginia athletics and Virginia basketball, to see how much it's meant to them, that's rewarding. That's gratifying to see people come up and just say, I was there for this many years, or when they did it back in this year, and it was there when you did some things, and to see how emotional it makes them when we go and speak at these the Virginia Athletic Foundation tours, and not even so much that the success, but with the young men and how it's been done, that has made a difference to a lot of people. So that part has been gratifying to an extent, but a lot of pats on the back for our players, certainly myself. A lot of it undeserving, but that's just the nature of this thing. It is. And so knowing that, that's why I started the way I did is you're defending nothing. You get as good as you can. And if that takes you past it, to it, great. If it doesn't, great. You max out. And that's the thing. And if they have that mindset, then that's kind of it. This will sound a little corny, but I was thinking about it. My wife and I were watching we started watching Friday Night Lights this summer. And I kind of tell some of our guys this, if you remember, if you've seen that, before they go out for the games, the coach always looks at the players and he says, clear eyes, full heart, can't lose. And then they repeat back, can't lose. They run out there, you know. And it's kind of that mentality with our guys. If they have clear eyes about, they understand who they are. That's our identity, our humility. If they really understand that and they have that kind of, if they'll go after it for everything they have with a passion and not worry about if they fail, if they succeed, if they have that kind of heart, that's all I can ask for. And then that'll take us to whatever we have to. And I think that's so important because expectations, pressure, that sometimes that can mess with you. And I always, we talked about it. That just means you've done something good and maybe you're close to something great. And look at it that way, but get after it and don't worry about the outside stuff. That's the best way for these guys because you can't, again, it's hard to be unaffected by everybody coming up and the excitement. So that's there, but acknowledge it and then get to where we need to get to each day.
You've had a lot of success. You've had a lot of success with people redshirting. Some of them obviously had to redshirt. Malcolm when he was hurt. Mm-hmm. Anthony when he was transferring. You got a guy sitting out this year. You had a guy sitting out last year.
Mike
Seems
Scott
like,
too.
Huh?
Mike Scott too. That helped
right.
him.
Most programs can't do that.
Right.
Do you think you have some kids this year that will buy into that and may sit out for hope of later gain? Yeah,
I think our program's at a place, before I mentioned a lot of those guys had to play. When you have more veterans, it's a place where you want you to get your program too. And it's always, I've said this to you guys before, I think it was last year, it is always the player's decision. It always is. I'll make suggestions. I say, hey, this is what I think, but this is your career. It really is, and you have to decide. And I will always sit down in that situation and we discuss what's best, and then they have the right to decide what they want. But it's hard for young players, young men today, because it's, as we've talked about with the instant gratification, to really wait and to work and to be patient. And maybe you got to wait for 2-3 years or wait till you're an upperclassman or however that is challenging. But those that do, there's real good stuff in the end of it. I mean, if you can spend a whole year of working with the guy I just was talking about, Coach Curtis, of honing your skills and perhaps owning them, as I said before, and studying and understanding, you're just going to be better. And if you wait and wait, it's there. But that goes against what they're getting bombarded with at times. But those who have the vision to understand that, I think, have really benefited from it in our program. They really have. So this group, there's a chance there could be, for sure, a player or two. I mean, we have one for sure with Darius. And then, yeah, there could be another one or two. We'll just have to see where we're at when we get close to it. You have to obviously make your decision at a certain time. And, again, it will always rely on the players and his family or guardians or whoever that help make that decision, because that's a big decision.
Yeah, Tony, you mentioned Justin earlier, his need to become more consistent. He was Sixth Man of the Year, I guess, last year, won that ACC award. Is he a guy who maybe is, given his style of play, seems like he's good in bursts? Is he a guy who's maybe better coming off the bench, or have you thought that through at all, what his role might be this year?
No, I haven't. I think I just want him to be consistent. And, again, you could look at it and say, well, who's going to start for you? And, we got experienced guys. We say, okay, this is the natural guys. But, again, I don't even get hung up in that. With guys like Justin, Mike, all the guys that played maybe more inconsistent minutes, that's where their consistency. We did an article, or you did on him, talked to me about him trying to even drop some weight so he can have more stamina. It's not like he's heavy and he needs to lose weight because he's overweight, but like LeBron and some of these guys, to trim down so he can move a little better and be that. And I think he's starting to do that. You'll have to ask Coach Curtis exactly, but he looks like that. So just all those little areas to be able to play harder, longer. And then when you're tired, Justin, let me know and come out, because so many of our guys, you see with our young guys, once they get fatigued, that's when a lot of things start to unravel in terms of decision-making and all that. And, again, efficiency, soundness, sureness, those things, when those things are accompanied with players with, the physical abilities of the Justins and Mikes and all the guys we have, that's when they're at their best. And I think that's the next step for him. And Justin's game is, he provides that spark that very few can with the big block, but he's with the hustle plays and use his physicality. I want him to use it on the glass. When there's the opportunity for a drive, he can stretch the defense. But again, it all comes down to how can I help this team and doing that. And I think he's working hard to do that.
Tony, talk about the opening of the season on the road at JMU, how that can help the team prepare for later road games, certainly through the non-conference season, and also the trip to New York and how a tournament setting can help prepare for the postseason later on.
Yeah, I think, there's so much parity in college basketball, and you play on the road, you play in a setting that I'm sure there'll be a lot of excitement on opening night for us, for them. Certainly Coach Brady, a well-coached team, all that stuff. They'll be ready, and to go into that setting with your team, those are good opportunities to see where you're at. Certainly going and playing, and everybody's playing in these tournaments now. There's quality teams there. You're playing in a beautiful, I've never been in the Barclays Center, but all those things are positive. We have some very good teams, the non-conference, and then we talked about the conference. So it's really all geared towards finding out about your team. You don't want to get to the conference and be like, well, I don't really know. I'm not sure what we're made out of. I don't know. You want to put yourself in those spots where you got to play on the road. You got to play quality opponents, different styles of opponents. So you really have a good gauge of where you're at, and then try to be as ready as you can to play in, obviously, conference play.